Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Barry Season 3, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I was kind of getting this feeling last episode. Now, after this episode, I'm like, this season might be the darkest season so far. Like, this show's already had, like, dark elements to it, but I feel like there's always been this interesting balance of levity. Like, after last episode, and now this with Barry's story, I feel like this might be the darkest season, especially where Barry's story is going. So, I was kind of thinking that last episode, but I wasn't quite sure. That's why I didn't really say it, but this episode definitely kind of tilted me. We're like, oh, I don't like the way Barry's story's going, and that's going to be interesting. But we'll talk about that more when we get to Barry's side of things. First and foremost, let's start off with Cristobal and NoHo Hank. Obviously, they're keeping up their affair. I assume, like, everyone that's... Well, because all of Cristobal's people are dead. So, like, I was about to say, like, oh, would they say anything? But it's like, no, they don't know about it. And obviously, NoHo Hank is hiding it from his people. But it's like, well, I say his people, but there's only 3 people left. It's Batir and 2 of his other men that survived. Because, once again, they were getting Fuchs out of there. So, that's the only reason why they survived the monastery situation. So... But they want to sneak off together. But before Cristobal can make that happen, his father-in-law shows up, who is the head of their group. In fact, because Cristobal is married to his daughter, and they have kids, and you're like, oh, wow. So the whole him and Hank thing is an affair type of thing, which makes you wonder, like, oh, like, I mean, you know, it makes you wonder, is like Cristobal bi, or is it maybe he's always been into men more so than women, but maybe it's like, it's not safe to be into men, and maybe that's why, because like when they were celebrating and stuff like that, he was checking out all those guys that were pouring stuff on him, so that's why I'm like, it feels like it might be a thing of he married Elena, simply for the fact is, maybe it's like he couldn't be with who he wanted to be with. I don't know. Maybe that's also the thing too. With Hank, he's able to be himself. He doesn't have to like pretend or anything. Once again, maybe. Or maybe he actually does legitimately love Elena, but part of me feels like it might be a part of that thing of like he kind of has to hide part of who he is. And maybe that's actually why him and Hank make such a good couple, that Cristobal is such a nice person and stuff like that, but Hank is someone who is always... Maybe it's like... Because maybe that's what also brought them together. It's like, Cristobal had like the reputation of being kind of this scary guy, and it seems like the one who really has a scary reputation is his father-in-law. But, you know, NoHo Hank like played the role of like, oh yeah, I'm a scary guy, but truth be told is, I'm like, I'm a lovable idiot. So, like, he's kind of someone who always wears his heart on his sleeves. He's like a really... So, they both had to kind of pretend to be something they weren't. So, I'm curious if that kind of flows into that, but... Because his father-in-law was like, yeah, we got to kill the... we have to kill the Chechens, which I'm like, once again, it's like, it's so jacked up, because I'm like, the moment, like, his people, like, rolled up his elite squad and blasted all those, I was like, wasn't there only a few of them? And it's like, okay, good, because luckily no one was there. I thought, like, he'd warn Hank, or at the very least, I thought Hank wouldn't be there because he went to go try and meet up with Cristobal, but... Cristobal was able to get him, like, the heads up, so they're all, like, hanging out. They're, like, I think they're on, like, a tour bus. It's like, oh, my God, this and that. Oh, my God, that's Jimmy Kimmel. It's like, oh, see, that's what... And I love Batir's, like, yeah, the man's show doesn't hold up or something like that. And I was like, oh, that, you know... I just thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, that's funny, because I'm sure a lot of people would say that same thing. I don't remember the man's show enough to really comment on that. I remember bits and pieces when I was younger, but that's about it. I never watched it regularly enough for it to really stick in my head. But I thought that was interesting. But Cristobal has to break up with NoHo Hank, because it's like, right, we can't be together, because, you can't say anything, because Hank's like, oh, no, let me talk to him. It's like, no, you don't talk to him. No one talks to him. He will kill you. You have to run. But Hank's like, we don't run from anything. But Cristobal breaks up, and I love the extended stay on Hank's face as Cristobal, you hear, I was like, oh, they're staying on this a long time, and his footsteps, you can hear him, like, walking, getting in the car, driving away. I'm like, I love how they just stayed on that for so long and just made it so sad and awkward, because most things, obviously, they keep it, it's just as he walks away, most things would cut away, but the fact is they stay there, let you hear the footsteps, let you hear him get in the car, crank it and drive away. It's so good. But it makes you wonder, what's Hank going to do? Well, Barry had been asking about work, so Hank might go to him and say, right, I want to be with Cristobal, so how do I do that? I need you to kill his father-in-law and his elite squad. And it's like, maybe that's how, and maybe Hank will be like, that's how you get my forgiveness, you know. So maybe that's where that kind of goes, because this episode's all about like, oh, you know, it seems like that's the theme of the season too. Is like forgiveness, because now we have a better idea of what Barry's idea of forgiveness looks like. So he's trying to get, his idea is that if he can get Jean a job, everything's going to be copacetic. I was like, okay. And I like that this episode also focuses on something that's always been in the background, but one episode touched on it a little bit, but we've never really gone into detail about it, is that Jean's career. Because we saw in one episode, I want to say it was in season 1, he went trying out for like an extra part. Yeah, it was definitely in season 1. He was trying out for like not necessarily an extra, maybe it was an extra, but it was definitely something that only had like 1 or 2 lines, right? So that's why I'm like, okay, maybe his career isn't what it's supposed to be. In this episode, you find out a lot of people don't like Gene. The reason why he doesn't have a great career, like most people don't cast him and stuff like that, he has a terrible reputation in Hollywood. He's kind of an asshole. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe that's stuff he did in his younger years, and he mellowed out as he's gotten older, or who knows. I mean, we've seen aspects of him pushing, you know, the actors and stuff, so to try to be the best versions of themselves. So it's like, he can come off asshole-ish, but I don't know if that's just like, oh, that's a tamer version of what he's been in the past or not. But Barry turns to Sally to cast him, and it was that interesting thing where she was like, oh, did I ask you to come here? And he was like, no, I came here on my own. She's like, okay, cool. And it's like, okay, so I need you to give Mr. Kusino a part. And she's like, I tried. He's like, aren't you the boss? And she's like, yeah. And then Barry flipped his shit yelling at her, and that was scary. Like, and Barry, that's the thing, Barry's so far up his own ass right now just because he's so busy trying to get Gene's forgiveness. I mean, it's also because he even says it, like, if this doesn't work out, he's gonna have to kill Gene. And like, the fact is that Gene's kind of like tied, because Gene's tied to him being who he is now. If it wasn't for Gene, he wouldn't have the life he has. So like, trying to get Gene back on his side is his way of maintaining this life, everything he sacrificed for. But him going so hard into pain against Sally like that, her against the wall, he doesn't even realize like what he's doing right there. And that's why I'm like, yo, I don't know, like, I've given Barry a lot of leeway in the past seasons, because despite doing shitty things, you're kind of like, right, despite him doing shitty things, he kind of has somewhat of a good heart. Now he's kind of having a little bit of a Joe from You turn, where it's just kind of like, yeah, at this point it's just kind of like you want to kind of give Joe the benefit of the doubt in certain points. I mean, granted, we kind of already went down that route in season 1, a little bit in season 2, and then kind of season 3, but this is like, we've seen it over and over again, and I guess I shouldn't be too surprised, because we've seen like Barry slipping into that dark side of himself, that it's there. So like, you're kind of like, oh man, fuck Barry for doing that, screaming at her like that, terrifying her like that, even to the point like the actress who's playing her daughter's like, shouldn't we do something like that about that? But they can't do anything, because it's like, yeah, it was a scary thing and other people heard about it, but he didn't lay a hand on her, he didn't threaten her, he did, you know, have her pinned against the wall, and he yelled at her, but he never touched her. So it's like, right, and he's also not an actor, a part of this production, so we can't do anything HR-wise. So I think she's definitely going to be doing something more, because I think she recognizes, well, she said that, she was talking to Sally about she was making something that was personal as well, a project of her own, so it makes you wonder, does it kind of touch in this area too? Because this whole story is very important to Sally, and Barry, once again, Barry's not even realizing the monster he's becoming. He's so concerned with trying to fix things that he doesn't see the way he's treating Sally, and you can see the parallels with the Sam situation, and it bums you out a little bit. You're like, oh man, Barry is, like, it's kind of like oh man, like I said, he's a shitty person, because it's like, let's not get it twisted. He's murdered a ton of people, but, you know, you wanted to give him a second chance, but then it's like, no, you've kind of gone this far. You kind of massacred a whole bunch of people. Like, at the very least, you didn't, it sucks what he did about Janice, but, I mean, even I didn't get too hung up on it, which is kind of super, I mean, what does that say about me? But then, like, the massacre in the monastery, you're like, ugh. And now this, like, that's where it really kind of goes, like, yeah, you're starting to see a pattern. And that's the sad thing, too, is for Sally, it's like, ugh. Like, she already went through this with Sam, and the fact that she's doing a story about this, and she's telling her daughter, like, oh, I don't want you to go through something I went through. And now she's kind of going through it, like, this cycle again of, like, and maybe Sally's like, right. Because she saw Barry as a good person. And now it's a situation of, like, he's kind of showing himself to be a bad person. Even the actress who plays her daughter is like, no, he seems like a bad guy. He's like, at the end of the day, he is. He's a bad guy who wanted to change. But maybe, you know, maybe Gene wasn't right. Maybe people can't change in that regard. I don't know. That's going to be the interesting thing, because I think this season's going to do a really good job of, like I said, the first 2 seasons, you know, maybe some people are like, oh, after you killed Janice, he was kind of, maybe for people, they were just like, fuck Barry. I mean, he's our protagonist, so I think the show was designed to make you go feel at least a little sympathetic, but also, like, you're also supposed to be like, I feel a little sympathetic for Barry, but fuck Barry. This episode made me go, I kind of lost any sympathy for Barry, just like straight up fuck Barry, like. And the fact is, when he talks to Sally later on, and we see like what she's doing, like she's preparing the meal, she got him a beer, and you're like, oh, I don't like that. That's heartbreaking. And she's like, oh, his controller's messed up, let me get a new one. And she's like, oh, I love you. And she's like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm sorry, I was stressed out. I'm like, why are you? And you're like, dude. The fact is, the cycle is there, because she did the exact same thing with Sam. She said it, like, she stayed for the apology. And the effed up thing is, Barry hasn't even apologized, because he doesn't realize. He's like, yeah, about that whole thing, because she was like, yeah, I was texting you and stuff. She's like, and she's the one apologizing. It's like, why should you apologize? You did absolutely nothing wrong. Once again, this episode makes Barry look like such a garbage human being. But also, it's like, the show's probably, and I'm sure other people are like, Barry's always been a shitty person. When you talk about it, it's like I said, I've always given him some leeway, because he's always seemed like a good-natured person at heart, that he's done some bad things. It's almost like that Walt situation of like, yeah, it's that Raymond Reddington, Walter White type of thing of like, hey, you're kind of done some shitty stuff, but I get what you, but it's like, at a certain point, Walt kind of did cross the line for a lot of people. It just depends on where you draw that line at certain points for people. But also, I've also talked about this before. I was Team Walt to the end. I know it's like, oh, really? It's like, yes, I was. I was Team Walt to the end, because I kind of wanted him to get away with it. Once again, what does that say about me? You know, that says a lot. Because I'm also the guy that's like, Death Note, oh, I kind of wanted, spoilers, I wanted Light to get away with it. I wanted him to kind of win. But it's like, Light's a shitty person. Like, not only, you know, he's pushing his justice on people, and also does he kill and manipulate everyone to get, you know, everyone's a means to an end to him. The ends justify the means for him. Yeah, but that's, once again, that's just storytelling wise. So that's why I think I kind of lean more towards giving people some leeway. But I don't know, like that whole thing with Sally and knowing her history with abuse, it kind of made me go, fuck Barry. Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm surprised. I don't know if that's meant to be the thing that makes you do that, or whether it's just, I don't know, for whatever reason that hit a chord with me. I was like, Jesus Christ, Barry, when he was yelling at Sally, like, it was so visceral, just like the way, like, because he never gets like that with her. To be fair, he's kind of gotten like that in the plays and stuff, but she's like, oh, go, yeah, good, and she kind of leans into it, because she's thinking he's acting. This isn't him acting, this wasn't a scene, this is his rage coming at her like that, and seeing her, like, fixing the spaghetti, she was like, oh, no, I gotta go home and fix the spaghetti. I was like, what's this about the spaghetti? Oh, it's for Barry, and it's just like, and that's the thing. It's been like 6 months. We have no idea what Barry's been like in these 6 months. Like, because I was thinking, like, Sally was like, oh, maybe you don't have to show up at, no yellow flowers. I love you. Like, I was just kind of like, oh, that kind of seemed shitty. And now it might make sense why she was acting like that. Because, like, she's like, yeah, I kind of don't want you around when you're acting like this. But she, because we're only getting that view of things. This is our peek into that for the first time. And once again, for the past 6 months, that could have been happening. And just Sally's caught in that cycle again of like, what happened with Sam is now happening again, but she just doesn't recognize it because she loves Barry. And it's like, right, I love you. And he doesn't even say it back. And I know that's not like overly, that's what you're getting caught on. But I feel like that's a key sign of him not, like, he's just so caught up in his own thing. He doesn't realize it. Once again, he never even apologized to her, And I think it's also a commentary, too, that, like, the person who's writing stuff, she was like, I actually like my job, and I don't want to kind of get involved, I don't want to lose my job. You're like, ugh, obviously hits a little too close to home in that regard, but, so, there's all of that, but, circling that, Barry is doing all he can. In fact, he went in to get a job for Gene, and like I said, most people are like, nah, fuck Gene. He actually went to see a casting director. She was one of the casting directors when he was meeting with Jay Roach last, what was it, in episode 7? And it turns out they really liked Barry, but they never could get back to him, so they gave it to someone else. It's like, it's Adam Devine and Josh Gad. It's like, right, 2 short people. That's not funny. That's never going to work, but whatever. But now they're offering him something else, and I love that Gene's like, really? You went in to get me a part, and somehow you walked out getting one, and now you actually want me to help you understand the character. And so Gene's trying to, like, appease to his humanity, being like, right, I didn't just make you a good actor, I made you a good person, a good human being, and this is how you're going to repay me? And he's just like, I love you, Mr. Cousineau. And he's like, I appreciate that, Barry, because he had talked about the fact is that Barry was kind of lost, and Barry admits, it's like, I was lost until you helped put me on the path. And he's like, now can you help me with this part? And you're just like, Barry's brain is not there, his mind is not. The guy is lost yet again, and just, this is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I could definitely see this being a series where, like, at the end of it, Barry dies. Because Barry either gets put in jail or someone kills him, or he could kind of kill him himself, but I think he's going to die in, like, a shootout, and it's going to be kind of that thing of, I don't know if it's going to be like a Walt, like, spoilers, redemption arc, like, Walt tried to make things right in the end. It doesn't make up for all that he did, but in his own way, he tried to make it right, and he kind of got away with everything, but he kind of didn't. So that's why I get the feeling like Barry's not going to walk away from this series. Like, I think at the end of it all, he's going to die. What those circumstances are, whether it's going to be a police shootout, they put him down, whether he gets locked up or something, or gets exposed for all the terrible stuff that he's done. Not unless this series has a jacked up ending where it's like, yeah, Barry gets to start over again. I'm sure there's a lot of parallels you can make to the show You on Netflix when it comes, like, to Joe and Barry. Neither one of them sees himself as the villain, and even when they do, they try to make excuses to be like, no, like, and like I said, it's just, he's so focused on Gene loving him, because it's like, right, Gene made me what I am, not Sally, she's my girlfriend, who cares, but Gene, I need his love and forgiveness first and foremost, because I don't want to kill him, because killing him would mean killing Barry Block and letting go of everything that I've built up. But it's like, it's already slipping through his fingers. He's just, in his attempt to piece together the shattered vase that is this life, he's not realizing everything else around him is shattered. He's so busy on, like, fixing this vase, he's not recognizing all the other broken pieces around him. So, probably not the best metaphor to use, but still. But Barry went in, did his thing, and then talking to that, which really quickly, I should also, speaking of the casting director, I don't know why, I should have probably paid more attention in season 1 and 2. Obviously, I looked up Jay Roach last season, and it's like, oh, he's a real director and everything. Allison Jones is a real casting director. It makes sense. It's a show set in LA, so of course you probably cast real people in those respective roles. But it's like, I don't know, I found that interesting. She's actually, like, gained a lot of, like, over her career, she's, like, played a big role in putting together a lot of ensemble casts. Like, I know ones that kind of jumped up was, like, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Freaks and Geeks. There was, like, a long list. Like I said, I quickly, like, Googled her and checked out, like, her Wikipedia. And those were just, like, there was a long list of stuff that, like, she's credited for, like, being, like, the casting director on. And I more than want go back in retrospect, I feel like I have seen her name pop up before. Not just in the confines of the show. There was some other show that she was part of the casting direct. Oh, The Good Place, which I thought was interesting because who's also in this show, Darcy Carden, played Janet in The Good Place. So I was like, oh, that's interesting how that played. I mean, who also was also in that. Kirby Howell Batiste was also in that as well. So it's interesting how that plays out like that. I'm sure you can probably read even deeper if you look at some of the cast of this show and find out some of the connections of whether or not she's been casting and casted projects that they've all been part. Once again, I did just a quick Google search and stuff like that, but tangents and all that aside. But Barry, what essentially Gene told her is what Barry told that casting person. And despite Gene's whole thing, which apparently he brought a gun, and that's why Allison doesn't like him, or it's like things kind of blew up. I think it was something related to family ties, and he was kind of a complete and utter asshole to her. So that kind of led to her not liking him, and he's kind of got that reputation for being an asshole. But Barry not only got the part, but he also got a part for Gene because he's like, right, I was lost, and Mr. Kusano, he gave me solid ground to stand on again. Once again, like, Gene's his foundation, and if he has to, this has to work, or he has to kill Gene. And once again, like, he's talking to Sally, he's like, no, I'm good, because, it's like, yeah, I'm okay. It's like, it doesn't even register in Barry's brain what he did earlier, how much of an asshole he is. And maybe he will recognize that, and he'll walk away from Sally, because I think it's best he stays away from her, because at least he was on the path of redemption. He's on the path of forced redemption now. He thinks he can make everything right, and he can't. It's not going to end well. This season, like I said, I think this season is going to be the darkest season. I think it's going to be the most tragic season, but we'll see. But Gene ended up getting away, running down the street, climbs in someone's backyard, and we see this couple, like, it's like, we're breaking up. It's like, why are you leaving me? It's like, you have too many dogs. Who? You! And it's like, we see Gene running as, like, there's a horde of dogs, and then he goes to that lady, like, hey, can you help me? The guy who killed my girlfriend is after me. She's like, oh my god. It's like, yeah, he tried to get me an acting part. And she's almost like, okay, crazy. And it's like, yeah, she's like, is that your dog? He's like, no, this is one of the 30 dolls that just mauled me. And it's like, yeah, out of context, it's going to sound like, oh, you're some crazy guy that's out of his mind. Okay. She's like, oh yeah, like, there's a taxi, like, right around the country. Oh, there it is. And ended up being Barry's car, which Barry, trying to get to Gene, crashed into someone else. Gene took the opportunity to run away. Got to Leo's and was like, call the police. Ooh, Barry was already waiting for you. And it's like, cool. No, we're good. Dad, you wanted me to call the police about something? He's like, nope, no, I didn't. That's nothing. And Barry, once again, being bad guy Barry, I need this to work out. You're going to take the part, and we're going to be good. Because if this doesn't work out, you try to do that again, this one and that one, his grandson and his son, they'll pay the price. It's like Barry threatening them. He's never, like, threatened someone like that before. Once again, that's why I'm like, so, it's like, right, Barry's not a good guy. I don't know why I'm, like I said, I wanted to give him some leeway and the benefit of the doubt, but it's just kind of like, it's like, yeah, this episode really, but once again, what does that say about me? And what does Barry say? He's like, I love you, Mr. Kusano. And he's like, can you say it back? He's like, I love you, Barry. Can you say it again? And you're like, wow. Once again, I'm definitely getting Joe from You vibes from him. It's like, there's definitely something in your brain is just so broken right now that you don't realize, like, what the fuck you're doing and just how crazy you are and how you sound. It's definitely going to be wild. Once again, episode 3 is currently out, so I'm going to jump on that after this. I'm so interested to see where the hell that takes us. So it's going to be interesting to see where things go from here. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.